And of course, we are spending just a portion of the afternoon together talking about the budget. So this is my first virtual town hall as it pertains to the budget. And one of the reasons why I wanted to do this is that in the year and a half that I've been in the Senate, and especially for a number of folks who were on the webinar who are local officials, we know that our budgets can be very complex given the amount of issues that we are trying to address, but also opportunities to continue to invest in our respective communities. And so the New York State budget also falls in that category, and it's a very massive thing for sure. I always like to level set. The New York State budget this year was a total of $237 billion. The budget itself, 8,000 plus pages. And so this town hall is really designed to the best of our ability here with so much information, try to present some key areas that I know several of you who are on the webinar, those who will be watching later, have expressed as issues, but also opportunities for continued advancement and growth, most certainly in the state, but especially for us here in the Southern Tier. So again, I want to thank you all for joining. There will be opportunity for questions and answering at the end. So I want to try to get through as much as possible. And it is a lunch and learn, so I hope you have food with you too, as we're going through some of the key areas in the budget. So let's move forward. So as I continue to level set, not just simply the amount of money that was allocated in the budget and also the length of the budget itself, I thought it would be important to lift up the actual state budget process for those who may be familiar and those who may not be familiar. So as you can see here, there's a really great guide to help our communities to know what happens in the budget in terms of the process. So as you see on the screen here, if you go to the website through the Division of Budget, they produce what's called a Citizens Guide to the budget, because again, it's a very massive, not only document, but also a lot of work goes into it. And so this is a way, especially for those things I may not be able to get to in the webinar today, but to find out more information. And so that's what the image on the left is about, and it is a screenshot of the Citizens Guide to the budget process. So in that same vein, typically in the budget process, it starts, so we're in June. And so from June till about the fall, so October, the agencies, the state agencies do what's called budget preparation. And then from September to or October, December, the Division of Budget also does a review of the budget. And then later on in the fall, between November up until January, the executive branch or the governor makes decisions as pertains to what they plan to present as budget priorities to us in the state legislature. And then from January till March, actually April 1st, the New York State Legislature, we actually deliberate on the budget and we have negotiations with the executive branch. And then once the budget is passed, it's due April 1st, that's when the budget gets executed after that. So I just wanted to provide that context as well in terms of the budget process as we continue to move on. So I thought it would be good to talk about areas of the budget. And I wanted to start specifically, since there's a number of folks on the webinar who represent local government. One of the things that, as a former local official myself, I most certainly understand the challenges that local governments face when dealing with a variety of issues, whether it's infrastructure, other things like around housing and so much more. And so the state plays a pivotal role in that because we invest significant funds to help our local municipalities. And so with the fiscal year 2025 budget, this is an example of that, in which this year, well, in this fiscal year 2025, we lifted up some key areas of investment with local government, including things such as addressing foreclosures, issues with cannabis and alcohol permits, along with retirement benefits and so much more. So we're going to do a much deeper dive into the resources as pertains to local government. One big one right off the top is addressing Tier 6. I have heard from not only local officials, but also public service organizations that Tier 6 continues to be a challenge when it comes to recruitment and retention of public service employees. Our chair for civil service, Senator Jackson, and myself and other colleagues in both houses have been working really hard to try to address Tier 6 challenges. And so there are a number of provisions that revisions we're trying to make rather when it comes to Tier 6. And so two in particular I want to lift up, we were able to get included in the budget. So the first deals with the final average salary that's used to calculate benefits. And so prior to the budget, the employee earnings that were used were based off of a 5-year range. Now, in order to, with calculating benefits, it's actually at 3 years. So that was a huge step forward. Also, as it pertains to Tier 6, as it relates to overtime, we were successful in including in the budget an extension to the provision to exclude overtime from Tier 6 pension contribution calculations. So we were able to extend it until March 31st of 2026. Again, these are just a few of the reforms we're looking to make to Tier 6, but these were the first ones we were able to get through in this session. The next piece as pertains to local government, I mentioned it before. Last summer, the Supreme Court in the Tyler v. Hennepin decision ruled in favor with regards to ensuring that homeowners actually are able to retain funds as it pertains to foreclosure. And so I know this was a significant issue, especially with our counties. And so one of the things we were able to do in this budget is that we are actually offering guidance to municipalities on how to return those surplus funds. Also, in the budget, there's a guide including a homeowner bill of rights, along with notification, expanding the notification process for homeowners in the unfortunate case of foreclosure. So those were a few things we were able to do as it pertains to the tax foreclosure process, is trying to clarify it. The next piece, this is a huge, huge win. Again, in my time as a local elected official, I understand firsthand the significance and importance of AIM, that's aid to municipalities. This is something that we have been asking for years as in terms of making sure that we increase it. AIM hasn't been increased to municipalities in well over a decade. And for the first time in over a decade in this budget, we were finally able to increase AIM funding at a total of $50 million for municipalities across upstate New York. And in our community specifically, that looks like a 11.61% increase for the cities of Binghamton, Cortland, and Ithaca, and then a 7% increase to all the towns and villages in our community. I also would be remiss in this moment, as we're talking about AIM, we also tried to, we know that the AIM funding formula is outdated. And so Senator Cooney has a bill to create a commission to study it. I'm actually a co-sponsor on that bill. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get that into this budget, but that is something that also remains as a top priority, is to have a commission to examine the AIM funding formula so that we're not having to wait another 10 plus years in order to see an increase in AIM funds, which we know are critical in helping our municipalities with providing funding for infrastructure and other essential services. And this is something we're going to also have to fight for again in the next budget, because this only pertained to fiscal year 25. But again, a significant victory nonetheless. And so next, in terms of infrastructure, so as I've mentioned before, I know that our infrastructure not only includes roads and public transportation, also our parks and so much more. And so in this fiscal year budget, we were able to make some significant investments in infrastructure. The picture that you see on the screen here is from a recent event that I did, investing funding, overdue funding to support the development of Cass Park in the city of Ithaca. We'll keep going. So STOA, for those who are familiar and those who may not be, STOA funding is what's used to help provide funding for our public transportation systems, most certainly in upstate New York. And so we were able to, in the legislature, negotiate successfully $10 million additional dollars for STOA funding for a total of $333.2 million, which was an 8.7% increase over the last year to support mass transit in upstate New York. Also, in that same vein, in addition to transportation, public transportation, our roads, there's a number of infrastructure wins that we were able to secure. The New York State Legislature, we restored $144 million, bringing the total to $9.5 billion, that's with a B, for some of the following programs, including CHIPS for a total of $598 million, total of $140 million for our state touring routes, and we have a few in the district, $200 million for the Bridge New York program, $150 million for Pave New York, $200 million for Pave Our Potholes. I know that continues to be an issue in filling potholes, but there's $200 million for that. And then $100 million for the Extreme Winter Recovery Program. So those are some key investments there with respect to infrastructure. In the area of public safety, we know that this continues to be a challenge, and also at the same time, this is something that we continue to prioritize as it pertains to public safety across the district and most certainly across the state. The first thing I wanted to lift up in recognizing the climate that we've been in for some time, but especially this year, it seems to have grown even more acrimonious. This year, we were able to secure funding in the budget at a total of $35 million to address the unfortunate challenges we are seeing across the state and most certainly here in the Southern Tier as it pertains to hate crimes. And so this grant provides funding to safeguard our religious community nonprofits, religious schools, and other vulnerable locations. At the same time, we know that domestic violence continues to be a challenge. It becomes even more pervasive. As the chair of women's issues in the Senate, I've been working really hard on trying to provide more supports in this area. And so in the budget, we were able to secure $35.7 million to combat and prosecute domestic violence crimes. Another big issue that came up during the budget session as it pertains to retail theft. We continue to hear challenges across the state and most certainly in the district around this challenge. And so in the budget, what we were able to do is that as pertains to retail theft is that the provisions will allow DAs to aggregate crimes committed within a period of time and charge them based on the total value of goods stolen rather than the individual amount stolen at each time. So to put that in perspective, if the individual steals something at $100 and they come back and continue in that same vein, it's the aggregate amount that they will be prosecuted for, especially for folks who are repeat folks who engage in this particular type of crime. This also will enable prosecutors to elevate the charge against the persistent few who drive retail theft crime rates and streamline caseloads. And so in the Senate, we were able to provide $150 million for prosecutorial services so that DAs have the resources they need to address these types of crimes. Also, continuing in public safety, we were able to secure additional funds for the New York Gives program, which stands for Gun Involved Violence Elimination Initiative. We know that gun violence continues to be a challenge across the state and most certainly in the community. And we have passed a number of laws to try to provide more access as pertains to gun safety. And so the Give program is one of the ways in which we've been doing that. And so in this year's budget, we have provided an increase of $36.2 million for local law enforcement to implement this program. And as you see here, the funding breaks down in the following ways. With the Binghamton Police Department, it's a total of $370,168. The Broome County Sheriff's Office, $260,330. The Broome County District Attorney's Office, $132,335. Broome County Probation, $110,000. The City of Ithaca Police Department, $141,745. Tompkins County Sheriff, $195,650. And Tompkins County Probation Department, $46,200. Also, public safety isn't just simply pertaining to issues of crime. It also pertains to issues in terms of access to services. And so some other key areas we know are important when it comes to public safety, and that most certainly is with mental health resources. And so in this budget specifically, we were able to include $8 million to expand mental health court operations, which can provide much more resources to community members that are in need of those services and unfortunately have to go to court in trying to offer alternatives to address both the issues with relation to the crime, but also helping them to get rehabilitation services that they need. Also, EMS services, this continues to be a significant need in the state, but especially in our area, we rely heavily upon EMS services. And so I was so pleased that we were able to secure $300,000 for supporting the Tompkins County Rapid Medical Response Program. This program is a pilot that Tompkins County has been doing, and they have been doing a phenomenal job in expanding this important resource. And so I was excited that I was able to secure funding for this. Another piece that, as I mentioned before, EMS services are critical, and at the same time, they are essential. And so we have a bill that was sponsored by Senator Mayer, and I'm a co-sponsor of, and that is making EMS as an essential service. So we were able to pass this bill in the Senate. Unfortunately, we weren't able to pass it in the Assembly, but it is something that we will continue to work on in the next legislative session. Another big piece when it comes to EMS services is affordability when it comes to these services. And so we were able to get passed in both houses Medicaid reimbursement for what's called treatment in place by our EMS providers. So when they're providing, when they show up to a call and providing treatment to patients, they weren't able to get paid because if the patient didn't end up going to the hospital, they were treated by the EMS provider. And so now that is no longer going to be a challenge. And so this is awaiting signature by our governor for this particular provision. Again, a big need that we have here is as well. Also, another big win as pertains to EMS, we're permitting more ambulance services to provide advanced life support for them, specifically to store and administer and distribute blood to enable resuscitation during transport. This was another bill that I'm a co-sponsor on, and this is also awaiting the governor's signature. So, education. So for those who may know, prior to my coming into the Senate, I did a lot of work on addressing our public schools, and in the Senate, this continues to be a priority for all of us. And so in the budget this year, there was a proposal to eliminate what's called the hold harmless provision. This would have had significant impacts on our small city and rural schools across the district. And I'm happy that we were able to push back against that. And so that proposal was eliminated and so now we still have hold harmless as a provision when it comes to school aid for our schools. This would have impacted, if it would have went through, more than 50% of public school districts in the entire state. Another big success when it comes to education is, of course, foundation aid funding. We know that some time ago we had the lawsuit that was filed against the state with regards to the inequities in our foundation aid funding for our public schools that disproportionately has impacted schools in our community. And so last year we were finally able to fully fund our schools with the foundation aid funding. And this year we were able to continue that trend at a 3.9% increase over last year and a 1% increase over the governor's initial proposal. So that breaks down to $9 million of an increase in foundation aid funding just for our district, and over a $12 million increase in total school aid for the district as well. So I want to definitely thank everyone for their continued advocacy on this important issue when it comes to our school funding. Another piece I'll lift up here is that there'll be some public hearings happening across the state as it pertains to our foundation aid formula. Similar to the AIM funding formula, we know that our foundation aid formula needs to be updated. And so there is a study that will be conducted this year and it will be concluded by the end of this year. And so there are public hearings happening across the state, and we'll make sure we get that information out. We want the community to know and weigh in on key areas that need to be factored into the foundation aid formula. And so that's going to be happening throughout the summer. Another issue that came up during the budget, and I heard directly from our leaders in school districts, is the concern with regards to implementing the zero emission buses across our schools. We know in our area, we have a lot of rural schools. And so one of the things that we were able to include in the budget is that within NYSERDA, there is a New York State Zero Emission School Bus Resource Center that is required to provide information to school districts regarding the transition to zero emission school buses, and also serve as a point of contact for questions and concerns from school districts. We know that it's important to ensure that these rollouts happen in the most successful ways that don't create additional barriers for our students, their families, and most certainly for our school districts. So that is the first step in trying to address it. Another piece I want to lift up in talking about funding for our schools, I would be remiss if I did not mention Roosevelt School. Roosevelt School in the north side of Binghamton, this is a high need school in the city of Binghamton School District. And myself and Assemblywoman Lepardo and so many of you who are here were very successful in getting funding secured for Roosevelt School for long overdue rehabilitation that needs to happen at this school. The school also provides, they have a school-based health clinic and so much more. They really are a gem, most certainly on the north side of Binghamton and the city of Binghamton overall. And so we were able to secure funding for Roosevelt School so they can make most certainly upgrades to the school and not interrupt instruction. So that was a huge win, and it's also going to save taxpayers a lot of money in that regard as well. So very happy about that. So continuing in the education space, higher education, I also sit on the Senate Higher Education Committee. And so one of the big issues we talked about this year that, well, we've been talking about it, but this year we're able to make some inroads, and that pertains to the tuition assistance program, also known as TAP. Now, some of you may currently be in college, have folks in your family that are enrolling in college, or you are thinking about going back to college. TAP is a program that provides, as the name says, tuition assistance. And so for the first time in 25 years, we were finally able to get the minimum award that's given to TAP eligible students from $500 to $1,000. And this was my bill that I sponsored. And so I'm really happy that we were able to get that included in the budget. Also, another big provision as pertains to TAP is the eligibility for the program. And so we were able to expand the income eligibility to participate in the program from $80,000 to $125,000, and to increase independent eligibility from $10,000 to $30,000, and then $40,000 to $60,000 for married independent. So again, this was a huge win in our campaign called Turn on the Tap. So this was, again, very instrumental, and I look forward to the great things that'll come from that in terms of making college more affordable. So staying in that same vein of affordability, one of the pieces that one of the many pieces rather, we were able to include in the budget around supporting working families on this issue of affordability is the Empire State Child Tax Credit. This is something that we know a lot of families are relying upon. It really helps in a multitude of ways. And so we were able to secure $350 million for a new supplemental tax credit for families eligible for this program. Also, in that same vein, in terms of saving money as pertains to taxes, but also for individuals in our communities who are parents, who are breastfeeding their children. The final budget put in a provision that new parents in the workforce have a 30-minute paid break that allows them to pump breast milk at work. Also, another big win is this piece as it pertains to prenatal leave, and New York is the first state in the nation to provide this particular policy, which provides 20 hours of paid sick personal leave for prenatal care. Again, supporting our working families and making sure we make things more affordable, very important, and so much more. Also, housing is another big issue that came up during most certainly our last budget session, and this year's budget session was no exception to that. It's a priority of mine and many of my colleagues in the legislature. And so there were several things that we were able to include because we know that we need more supports for tenants and of course for homeowners. And so some of the things we were able to include are as follows: 40 million for the homeowner protection program. This is a program that I'm not sure how many folks are familiar with, but this is a program for homeowners who have fallen on hard times financially and are in danger of having their home foreclosed on. The Home Ownership Protection Program, or HOP, is a program that helps homeowners in those particular circumstances. Also, we're able, and this is a new initiative. It's called the New York Housing for the Future Homeownership and Rental Housing Program. So we're able to secure $150 million for this program. And this is to help to build rental and home ownership units across the state at a maximum of 130% AMI or area median income. So that's another great investment. Continuing in this vein with housing, I know that the policy around good cause had a lot of attention. This is something that, again, we recognize, and I recognize the need to provide more protections for tenants. And so good cause eviction protections, and as the name denotes, there has to be good cause for the eviction. And so there are several provisions for that. And so for this particular piece in upstate New York, in our area, municipalities will have to opt in. So they would have to adopt at the local level provisions for a good cause. Also, there was additional money for, it's called the One Shot Program, $40 million to assist with eviction prevention funding for us in upstate New York. Another big investment when it comes to housing, this deals with new construction, which we know we need. And so in that same vein, oh, this is still within the good, these are some of the provisions within good cause. I apologize. So this piece in particular addresses, separate from good cause, the ADU, which is accessory dwelling units. And so this is a way for municipalities to adopt what's called an individual homeowner tax exemption on extra assessed value from the creation of these ADUs. Also important, also in the budget, we were able to get to provide clarity on the issue around squatters, that it clarifies the existing law we already had on the books as it pertains to squatters. And just to be clear, it emphasizes that a squatter is not and may not, will never become a legal tenant. So I know that was an issue that came up as well. To keep going. Also, another really important investment that I worked really hard on, along with some of my colleagues in both the Senate and the Assembly, and that is we are establishing a pilot program called the Infill Housing Program at $40 million. And it includes the city of Binghamton, along with Buffalo, Albany, Syracuse, and Rochester. This program, and this was an initiative, is an initiative being led by my colleague, Senator Ryan, out of Buffalo. And this is something we're continuing to work on in terms of the provisions, in terms of what's entailed, how you apply. But this program is an affordable housing program that covers construction costs and subsidizes the sale of new homes to low to moderate income New Yorkers for single family or two family homes across upstate New York. Also, we were able to put in the budget $40 million to help our small landlords with rehabilitating apartments. Another issue that came up, which again is unfortunate, we want to make sure we provide more resources to address, and that is the crime of deed theft. And so what we were able to do in the budget is that we established the crime of deed theft that places the offense within the grand larceny statutes, and it makes it illegal to obtain or transfer real property by fraud, deception, misrepresentation, or forgery. This is something that unfortunately does happen. And my colleague, Senator Myrie out of Brooklyn, I know our New York State Attorney General, Tish James, myself, several other folks support this particular provision that will protect homeowners. And then for our public housing entities that are in the district, there's $75 million outside of New York City, so in upstate New York, to support our public housing authorities. And we have several in the districts like the Binghamton Housing Authority and others. So moving on to, and I know this is a lot of information. We're coming up close to the end, I promise, because again, I want to make sure we have time for questions. So supporting local labor and workforce development. I've been very vocal in pushing for our region to have a seat at the table when it comes to economic development. I often remark that our community, especially in the Southern Tier, we're the home of so many innovative entities, whether you want to talk about IBM and most certainly the breakthroughs we're making in green technology right here in the Southern Tier. I've said this before, upstate New York is really on the verge of becoming such a huge leverager of innovation and green technology for not just simply the state, but for the country. And this also translates to good paying jobs and so much more. So in that vein, with workforce development, I thought I would start with supporting our small businesses, specifically through these two initiatives, New York Forward and the Downtown Revitalization Initiative. So $200 million was secured for these initiatives that will help support the upcoming rounds for both. These are two programs of several that help to support economic development with our small businesses across the state. And we've had a few awardees in the Southern Tier that benefited from these programs and so much more. So we're able to continue funding for those. Another big area this is new, and that pertains to labor as pertains to project labor agreements. So one of the provisions we were able to get in the budget, and I'm a co-sponsor of, is that specifically for SUNY construction, so construction that happens at SUNY campuses, for any projects that are valued at $10 million or more, PLAs are required for those projects. We also have a couple PLAs happening outside of SUNY, most certainly the Greater Binghamton Airport. There's construction happening there that's also a project labor agreement. I'm a proud union member myself, and I most certainly understand the benefits of project labor agreements. It guarantees local labor, good paying jobs, and so much more. So that is new in this year's budget. Also, we were able to secure $5 million for the Alive Downtown program. Again, this is a program that also helps our storefronts in downtowns across the state. So we're able to get $5 million for that. As I mentioned, our region is a huge conveyor when it comes to innovation and tech. And so we have what's called centers of excellence in technology. And so right in the district, we were able to secure some additional funding for those centers, $14 million for centers of excellence, including $1 million for Cornell University Center of Excellence in Food and Agriculture, and then $1 million for Binghamton University Center of Excellence. Also, $15 million for the Centers for Advanced Technology, which supports collaborations between private industry and universities in development and application of new forms of tech. So another big win when it comes to workforce development and labor. So another area I wanted to highlight in workforce development, we know that we continue to have challenges with recruitment and retention. And so I was happy that we were able to secure resources for the Workforce Development Institute at a total of $4 million and $2.5 million for the Workforce Development Institute that specifically focuses on manufacturing as well. Also, Cornell University, they have their Cornell ILR Worker Institute. We're able to get $300,000 for that. Also, our community is known for what's called agritourism because of agriculture through our farms and of course through our wineries, breweries, and so much more. And so we were able to get $3.5 million in funding from the tourism matching grants for Tompkins, Cortland, and Broome County. They can actually apply for this funding to help stimulate tourism in our community. This next piece is new. This is something I was very proud to be able to do. I know our chambers of commerce provide a lot of supports to our small businesses. And so the reason why this is listed here is because I was able to secure $150,000, which breaks down to $50,000 per county chamber of commerce that's in the district. So $50,000 for Cortland, $50,000 for Tompkins, and $50,000 for the Greater Binghamton Chamber of Commerce. That's specifically for workforce development initiatives that they are engaging in. And then agriculture. We know that agriculture is a huge part of the economy and so much more in our region and most certainly for the state. And so we were able to secure in the final budget over $11 million to support a variety of programs through the Department of Agriculture and Markets, $1 million for aspiring or beginning farmers, $1 million for socially and economically disadvantaged farmers, 1.2 million for the Farm Viability Institute, and continued support for our dairy farms and livestock, and support for the Farm Safety Fund. Another resource we were able to secure in the budget, and that was $19.5 million for Cornell University's Veterinary Diagnostic Lab and Animal Health Center. This was a huge win because Cornell University and the research they do at the Veterinary Diagnostic Lab helps us to get information, not just here in the region and the state, but nationally. The CDC actually calls on Cornell for their research to help get more insight onto issues such as bird flu and other things of that nature that impact our food and so much more. So again, very happy that myself and of course my colleagues in the Assembly, Assembly members Kellis, Pardo, and of course Senator Henchy were instrumental in helping to get these funds for this important program. And then as you all know, I also have been advocating for the environment for a long time. We know that climate change continues to be a challenge for us in the Southern Tier, whether it's flooding, most certainly we're all too familiar with that, and so much more, having access to clean water. And so in this budget, you know, continuing in that fight, I was able to help to secure $500 million in funding for our Clean Water Infrastructure Fund, which definitely is helpful for municipalities, communities overall in addressing our water and sewer infrastructure. Also, $400 million for the Environmental Protection Fund as well. Another piece as it pertains to the budget and the environment is the RAPID Act. And so this is a provision to expedite the siting and construction of electrical transmission and commercial energy storage, while at the same time preserving agricultural land. It also incorporates the greater community in terms of having input on the siting process and strengthening labor standards. Also in the budget, we're able to put in $54 million in capital appropriations for the New York State Canal System maintenance, repair, and preservation to address, as I mentioned earlier, issues pertaining to flooding. It includes language to make mapping requirements consistent with recommendations from the Upstate Flood Mitigation Task Force as well, which again, this continues to be a priority for me and so many of us who are here. And the next piece I'll talk about, and then I think we'll get to questions, is healthcare, and the next piece I'll talk about is veterans. So we know that you can't go to school, you can't go to work if you don't have quality, affordable health care. And this continues to be a priority of myself and so many of my colleagues in the legislature. And so this budget was no exception to that. So the final budget eliminates the cost sharing of insulin in all commercial health insurance plans, making it more affordable and more accessible to all who need it. We know in our community, we have a number of individuals who are insulin dependent, and it costs a lot of money for them to maintain their care, and also addressing other health needs and other needs that they may have. So this is definitely a significant accomplishment for sure. Also, we are ensuring that our young New Yorkers, our children do not experience disruptions in their health insurance. And so we're able to include in the budget a provision that allows children ages 0 to 6 to remain continuously enrolled in our public health insurance programs, Medicaid or Child Health Plus, without having to redetermine eligibility. We know that medical debt continues to be a challenge for so many families here in our community and across the state. And so the final budget increased the eligibility threshold for financial assistance, requiring that the State Department of Health establishes a minimum collection set of policies and procedures and a uniform financial assistance application form for all hospitals. A lot of our hospitals have financial assistance available, but the manner in which people were able to get access to those programs, it wasn't consistent. And so we were able to include in the budget a uniform process for that, which is going to be helpful not only to our hospitals administering care, but to us as consumers who may need those services, most definitely. Another big piece in this area of healthcare, specifically reproductive healthcare, as the chair of Women's Issues, is something I continue to prioritize along with maternal healthcare outcomes. Some folks may be surprised to know that in New York State, we have some of the poorest outcomes when it comes to maternal health. And so we have been making significant investments in that area, along with expanding access to reproductive care. And so in this year's budget, we were able to establish for the first time the Reproductive Freedom and Equity Grant Program. This is done through the Department of Health, and it is to provide funding for abortion providers and nonprofit entities to help ensure more access to abortion resources that may be needed regardless of health insurance status. Doula care is another big piece of services as pertains to improving maternal health outcomes. And so in this year's budget, we were able to implement 2 initiatives as it pertains to doula cares. Doulas are providers of care that help birthing people throughout the entirety of their birthing process, the gestation period, and then of course, post-birth. And so it is well documented that they literally help to save lives of so many birthing people because they've been able to help detect challenges, help be an advocate for so many birthing people. And so 2 initiatives that we're able to include in the budget. The first one authorizes a commissioner of the Department of Health to issue a statewide non-patient specific order to provide doulas for pregnant, birthing, and postpartum New Yorkers. This is very significant. And then the other is on the financial resources for doulas, and that is establishing a $250,000 one-year grant program. And this is a new initiative to provide funding to community-based organizations for recruitment and retention for increasing the amount of available community doulas in our areas. Another piece with healthcare, I know that Medicaid continues to be a challenge as it pertains to financial costs associated with it. And we most certainly see this with our nursing homes, assisted living programs, and hospital services. A number of us this year continue to sound the alarm that these facilities are in crisis. They need significant funding as it pertains to Medicaid reimbursement. And so we were able to provide some increases in that way, an aggregate amount of $525 million for hospital services, 285 million to nursing homes, and 15 million to assisted living programs. Although this may seem like a significant amount of money, we have so much more we need to do because we are seeing that a lot of our hospitals have waits in the emergency room. People aren't able to transition to nursing homes because of the lack of availability of beds and so much more, and staffing shortages. So again, this is something we're continuing our efforts in trying to address. We also have, we were able to secure $800 million for safety net and distressed hospitals. We do have safety net hospitals in our district, most certainly UHS and Guthrie Lords are examples of safety net hospitals, along with Cayuga Medical as well. And so we're able to secure $800 million for safety net and distressed hospitals. Distressed hospitals means those hospitals that are in deep need of financial services. Also, we're able to include requiring payment parity for commercial and Medicaid services provided through telehealth. This is something that continues to grow, and that is specifically telehealth medical services. And so that's going to be through April 1st of 2026. And the last piece, and then we'll get to questions, and last but certainly not least, veterans. We know our veterans provide so much support for our communities, not just simply during their time of duty, but post duty. And so New York is home to the 5th largest veteran population in the country. And so our budget this year, we continue to make ongoing investments in veteran services, including some of the following. So $8 million for the Joseph P. Dwyer Veteran Peer-to-Peer Services Program. And that breaks down for our region to $192,400 from Broome County, $104,000 for both Cortland and Tompkins counties. In addition, other funding programs for veterans were able to secure in the budget $350,000 for the Veterans Mental Health Training Initiative, $325,000 for the Clear Path Program for veterans, $300,000 for helmets to hard hats, which is another program, and $200,000 for the Sage Vets project. So I know that was a lot. And again, there's so much more I could have gone into, but I really wanted to, again, just share some of top line areas, but there's so much more that was in the budget. And so now I'd like to open it up for any questions that we may have. You should see on your screen, there is I believe a Q&A button that you can put your question in, and myself and members of my team will be answering some questions that you may have. Hopefully you've been eating this whole time as well, because this is a lunch and learn, but again, quite a lot of information. And so I hope that what I've shared is giving you some more insight as well. So I'm just waiting to see if there's any questions. I think we have some coming up here. Okay, so here's one question that I see so far. All right. And this question uh, is coming from a resident in Vestal, New York. And the question is, what is happening with the Consumer Directed Assistance Program? I'm so concerned about the changes with the folks I work with who are our fiscal intermediaries. So for those who may not be familiar with this program, it's called CDPAP, or the Consumer Directed Assistance Program. This is a program that helps individuals who want to receive services in place in their home, and have family members or friends who want to be what's called providers in terms of home care for them. And so this program has been in place for the last 20 plus years, and we have organizations in the district that have been providing these services, such as the Southern Tier Independence Center, or STIC, Finger Lakes Independence Center, or FLIC, and of course CAPCO, which is in Cortland County, that also provides these services. And so the Consumer Directed Assistance Program, as I mentioned, has been in place for a while. And what was proposed this year by the executive branch was to reduce what's called the number of fiscal intermediaries. These are entities that enroll community members into this program called CDPAP. In New York State, we had more than 70. And so in the budget that was passed, it was reduced from 70 to 1. And this created a lot of concern for many providers. And I definitely heard it from folks in our community because these are services that employ a number of folks. Are these agencies that I mentioned, and so many more, have been doing a really outstanding job in trying to connect those who are in need of these services. And so as of this new budget taking effect next year, as I said, there will be one fiscal intermediary. And so the Department of Health is going to run a procurement or a mini bid process to select the primary fiscal intermediary. Also, there's requirements that there will need to be what's called regional representatives, and that they will have to subcontract with the state's fiscal intermediary, the singular one. They have to subcontract with 11 state independent living centers representing regional diversity. And so both STIC and FLIC are going to be subcontractors for that. Some of the other provisions with this these changes is that we're trying to ensure that our providers are culturally competent in providing services, making sure that they are providing even more accessible services to consumers as they navigate the program, and so much more. So this was something that a number of us, including myself, were against reducing it by so much. But this is something that will take effect, and we will be working closely with our independent living centers to make sure that they are able to continue to provide these services. So thank you for your question. And I think there's another question as well. Just trying to find it here. Here we go. Yes, so this is from Amanda McIntyre. Amanda, thank you for your question. Any new provisions for childcare providers? So this was something that, again, was a big priority for us in the budget. There are resources we were able to secure in the budget as it pertains to childcare, with regards to childcare funding grants. That is something we can most certainly get you more information on, Amanda, in terms of the amounts. But we know that as a state, we have to expand more access to childcare. one of the things I'm actually trying to do is also in the district provide some more additional support to our childcare providers in that same vein as well. So that is something that is ongoing, because similarly with our assisted living facilities, our nursing homes, our hospitals, our EMS, they're at the crisis point. We know childcare is also there as well. So that's something that we're able to provide some resources for in the budget, but definitely looking to build upon that even more. Okay. And let's see. There's a question with regards to the Environmental Protection Fund. This is from Annie Corman. Thank you for your question. How can the 54 million for flooding through the flooding dollars through the Environmental Protection Fund be accessed via grants? In Tompkins County, we are very concerned about reducing flooding hazards. Yes, so that is something that we can most certainly work on, but the DEC is the entity that has provision over that, along with a couple other state agencies. So we can definitely get you that information in regards to getting more access to those dollars. And trying to find the other questions here. There's a question with regards to universal pre-K. Yes, we were able to get more resources for universal pre-K in the budget. One of the things that we also have tried to address, which is still ongoing, and that is as pertains to universal pre-K transportation services. We know that continues to be a big need. And so we were able to get more funding in the budget for universal pre-K supports. So yeah, I understand that it's definitely a challenge being able to hire and retain teachers and teachers' aides when we're not able to provide competitive funding for them. Absolutely, totally agree. And like I said, we're able to provide some additional funding, but we definitely have more to do in that space. Absolutely. Okay. And there's a concern about the AIM funding to the city of Portland and a lawsuit. I'm not aware of this lawsuit, Mary, but we can most certainly look into that as well, and how the AIM funding, again, AIM funding is, most certainly for infrastructure needs and services. So that is separate from this particular issue, but we'll have to look into it further. But thank you, Mary, for your question, and we'll follow up with you on that to see exactly, because I'm not familiar with this. This question is from Sarah Woken. Is there any provision for increased staffing and application process into the DSS food stamp unit? Not that comes directly to mind. I know that we do have, we were able to expand food stamp funding supports, especially in the summer, for dollars for the summer for food stamp services. So we'll definitely have to look into that question, Sarah, specifically. I know that food insecurity continues to be an issue in our area. Most certainly it's something I've been very vocal on and advocating for. So I will look into that. That would be through OCFS, Office for Children and Families, to see if there was increased, if there are any provisions for increasing staffing and changing the application process. So we'll look into that as well. The next question I see is from Alumni Porter. The issues of employment in Binghamton City Hall is civil service exams. For example, a woman who was promoted on the basis of a civil service exam, only demoted months later. So the question is there a way to eliminate the civil service for employees or update the civil service exam? Also, is there a way to get the results from the state sooner? So you have a couple of things going on here with your question, Alami. So I'll start with the civil service exam itself. I believe, and I'll have someone from my team correct me if I'm wrong, Senator Jackson introduced the bill. As I said, he's the chair of our civil service committee. And I believe that that bill, I believe it passed, and that is providing a waiver for certain civil service exams. That is there's a cost associated with civil service exams. And so that was something, I mean, we cannot eliminate civil service. I don't believe that's what you're asking me, but I'm not sure because civil service provides thousands of jobs to New Yorkers. So that is definitely a way for employment. One of the challenges in your other question, the other parts of your question around the civil service exam, there are a number of resources through our workforce development offices in the region where they do provide what's called civil service prep to help people know what to look for in the civil service exam, how to take the exam so that they can be successful. As it pertains to your question around the results, that is something that we're actively working on. And I know Senator Jackson, he's leading on that particular front in trying to address that challenge when it comes to civil service exams, getting the results a lot sooner, because that definitely is a challenge. Most definitely. Thank you for your question. And I don't see any, oh, we have one more. Cortland, this is from Mary. Cortland County Agriculture Funding. Have they requested ag funding for farmers? Many have applied and we were not getting a response a year ago. I will definitely look into this. Mary, if you can, we will definitely look into this question about the status of ag funding for farmers. There's a lot of funds, so I would need to know specifically what fund you're referring to with regards to getting more funds for farmers, because there's quite a bit that we're able to put in the budget. So it'd be helpful if you can send, and we'll put in the chat my office contact information if folks don't have it already. So that way you can send us directly with particular ag funding you're looking for, because there's quite a bit. Absolutely. Thank you for your question. Okay. And let's see. Here's one more question. I keep hearing that actions being taken in Albany are going to make us get rid of our gas stoves. Is that true? The answer is no. That is not the case. Last year in the budget, it included laws to require new buildings to be all electric, and there's certain provisions for that. So starting in the year 2026, for any new buildings that are 7 stories or higher, or excuse me, or shorter, they have to use electric heat and appliances. This also applies to larger commercial buildings with 100,000 square feet. But again, you will not have to get rid of, there's a lot of misinformation there. There's a number of exemptions. For instance, existing buildings will not be impacted by this requirement, even if they're being repaired or renovated. If you add on to your home and you want to utilize gas, you can still use it. This doesn't ban fuel generated power sources like emergency generators. I know we had some power outages in the district the other day. The power even went out at my house. So definitely understand that. So again, that doesn't ban those things. Some industries like restaurants, hospitals, doctor offices, factories, agricultural buildings will automatically be exempt from those requirements. Okay. I think we have reached, oh, we have one more, a couple more questions. All right. I appreciate everyone's engagement, most certainly. All right. This is from Susan Perkins. As an infant toddler advocate, we are grateful for the 2025 enacted budget that included a 5% increase early intervention services with a 4% modifier for underserved areas of the state. However, in Tompkins County and others we know, there are babies who are on the wait list for up to 10 months. Would like to see this reimbursement increase to 11%. Early intervention is a low cost, high impact support for infants that reduces costs of special education, other costs over a lifetime. Absolutely agree 100%, Susan. Again, we in the Senate, in our one house budget, we definitely asked for a lot more. And this is something that, again, I am a strong advocate for, and we will continue to fight for. And most certainly we'll look into the waitlist issue that you mentioned with regards to what's happening in Tompkins County. But absolutely, it's well documented. The early intervention really helps our children get the resources they need early so they can be successful throughout not only their time in school, but beyond. Absolutely. Our next question, of course, anytime. Are there any considerations to assist struggling childcare centers in Broome County? Yes, this is something that, again, I mentioned earlier. This is a priority of myself, also Assemblywoman Lepardo, Assemblymember Kellis, and other colleagues of mine in trying to provide more support to our child care centers. We were able to get, for instance, I know SUNY Broome Community College provides child care. We were able to get some resources there. I know I met with members of the Broome County Child Care Coalition a few months ago. I want to say it was probably like January of this year, in trying to not only hear challenges that they're experiencing, but also trying to identify more resources. And this is something that I'm actively working on and trying to find some financial investments that can help. But again, we definitely need statewide supports for this, because we know our child care providers are some of those who are the lowest paid and provide such incredible services to our children and their families. And at the same time, this continues to be a need not only for pay for those providers, but also for families to be able to provide, to actually be able to afford childcare. And that's something we're also actively working on. We did provide some provisions in the budget to help with affordability for childcare for families, but we most certainly want to and plan to do so much more. So thank you for your question as well. I think we are getting close to time, and I don't see any other questions. I'm just double checking to make sure. So not seeing any more questions. Again, I want to thank everyone for spending your lunch hour with me. Like I said, I know it's a lot of information. Following this webinar, there will be information available on my website at the New York State Senate that has some handouts to lift up some of the data that I most certainly shared. And so again, This is something that I know the budget is very challenging uh, thing, most certainly, but I continue to advocate for our community. We really need more equitable resources, and I definitely look forward to continuing to not only advocate in next year's budget, but also making sure the things that we were successful in passing in the fiscal 2025 budget, that those resources get to our communities in real time, because I know you all are doing such incredible work. And it's important as a state that we not only provide access financially, but also through policies and improving the quality of life for all of us. So again, I want to thank you all so much for joining this webinar today. Please don't hesitate to reach out to my office for any further questions that you may have. I hope everyone has a great Friday, a beautiful holiday. Stay safe, stay cool, and I look forward to seeing you all out in the community. Thanks again for your support. I hope you found this to be helpful.